Hiya, and welcome back to Adastra. Uh, hmm. I don't know. Uh, something Jello Apocalypse reference. Anyways, let's just jump right in. Sorry about that. I should have warned you about how frustrating it can be with all the pointless chatter. I shrug. Seems about right for politics. Oh, it is, but don't worry. It's rare that the triumvirates are in the same city all at once. This is for the trials, of course. Yeah, makes sense. You sure you're okay? I can never seem to tell. I'm fine. I rub my arms, the skin's sensitive and sore, just like my joints. I wonder if I'm getting sunburned too. Alright, so what do you think of the city? This part of it, at least. I wish I could take you where the skyscrapers are. But as I said, things are a bit chaotic at the moment. It's pretty cool. It wouldn't exactly be out of place on Earth. Definitely different, but really similar. Ah, well, you were uplifted by us after all. Yeah. So, is this what you're going to do as Emperor? Come to the city and just talk? Amicus chuckles. Oh, there will be much more to it, I'm sure. I'm hoping Cato will teach me a bit, if he's able to get over the trial. I remember that Cato did vote for Cassius. He's probably furious about it right now. Won't you have, like, advisors and stuff? Well, yes, but I must choose them. Would you choose Cato? I could. Will you? Well, maybe. But recent events have left me a bit unsure of that. Why is that? Amicus shakes his head. Don't worry about it now. We should be celebrating. I mean, you could become emperor at any moment. Shouldn't you have someone who's got a good head on their shoulders at the ready? I suppose. Who would you suggest? I get the feeling that he's goading me to offer myself, but that definitely wouldn't be the case. The few wolves I know make the decision pretty easy. Virginia. Amicus raises his eyebrows in slight surprise. Oh, well, yes, I would definitely consider her. The only problem is the image of a female telling me what to do. The tail-raiser reputation is bad enough. I roll my eyes. Maybe woven masculinity is something you can fix while you're the Emperor? Amicus doesn't seem to know how to answer that, but he doesn't have to as our food arrives. I'm a bit surprised since we didn't order, but looking around, it seems that everyone gets the same thing. There's the usual olives, grapes, cheese, and bread, but also seafood, and even eggs, which surprises me. Amicus thanks the nervous waiter before immediately starting to dig in. I do the same, but while I'm spreading cheese onto the bread, my mind wanders back to what might be happening in the city right now. So, how bad are things in the city? No one seems that concerned about it. From what I've been told, it's fairly mild. Riots are common in Adastra, but they don't last long. I think the people will calm down within the next few days. Oh, okay. So they don't, like, dislike you or anything. It takes Amicus a moment to swallow down his mouth full of bread before speaking. No, no. Most of the anger is directed at the triumvirates. I will say, though, I have my work cut out in rebuilding my reputation. Because of the sex video? Yes. Amicus tries to smile it off lightheartedly, but I can see his ears turning red. It must be weird being out in public like this, knowing that everyone saw it. I was told by one of the triumvirates from Lux to simply say it was fake. Not sure if that will work. Could be a good idea. Really, the biggest issue is that it delegitimizes the alliance process with the Chemians. The people will believe that I'm beholden to Neferu somehow. Amicus's expression finally falls a bit, staring down at his food as his munching slows down. I'm sure they'll get over it. From what I've been told, it seems like they're quick to forget. Well, yes, as soon as the next scandal comes along, hopefully one not involving me. Yeah. We eat in silence a while, and I can tell something is heavy on Amicus's mind. In the meantime, I'm a bit distracted with itching specific spots on my arms, feeling tiny little bumps on the skin. I wonder if I'm allergic to something in the meal, so I stop eating for the moment, choosing instead to lounge out on the bed. Marco, I've been meaning to ask you something. Yeah? Do you want to stay here, even after I become Emperor? The question catches me by surprise, and I'm left to try and gather my thoughts for a moment as Amicus continues to look down. What do you mean? Amicus sighs and glances at me. I mean, do you want to stay here with me, even if you have the ability to go home? Amicus quickly looks down again. I'm sorry, I know it's not my place to ask, but I thought I might as well ask. I stare at him for a moment, then I look down too. You know I need to go back. At the very least, I need to let my friends and family know that I'm okay. I know that they're looking for me in Italy right now, probably all of Europe at this point. I need to let them know. Amicus coughs hastily. Of course. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to come back. I do. I just know that there are problems. I lower my voice as I remember that we're in a public place and that mentioning illegal first contact would not be a good idea. If we can fix the problems, honestly, I'd love to come back and stay for a long time. I kind of surprise myself with that statement, but it's true. Amicus glances at me in surprise. Really? Yeah, if it wasn't a risk to your empire. Of course. I mean to speak to the parents as soon as I'm able. I'm sure. I'm certain we can figure something out. The look on Amicus's face right now, so sad, but a little hopeful, reminds me of something that I've been wanting to do for the past week. An Amicus? Yeah? I glance around quickly, making sure that the nearby patrons aren't listening. Do you want to date me? The statement, so ridiculous, so silly in this situation, comes out all quiet and weak, but I don't know how else to ask it. The word is so complicated between us now with how I try to explain to Amicus. It's something that I don't think I've ever said to anyone before, and just like Amicus, I find myself looking down immediately. It's quiet for a moment, and the restaurant suddenly lights up with a golden hue as the sunset hits the windows just right. I hear a long exhalation and realize that the wolf had been holding his breath. I look up then and see Amicus smiling at me. There's a mixture of happiness and relief on his face, maybe even a little amusement. I guess we've been dancing around it for so long, we both knew by now that it's what we wanted, what we've been building up to. Of course, Marco, I'm honored that you have me. I just realized something. Toe beans. I even see his eyes glistening a bit, and I want to get right up there and join him on his bed. But the public setting holds me back. I imagine Amicus is feeling the same way, and I wonder if maybe asking here in public wasn't the best place for it. But it was done, and I find myself grinning despite myself. The wolf grins right back. Like you said, while I'm here we might as well get to know each other better, and if you do figure something out, I can come back. Amicus nods and turns his head in a way that he's able to wipe an eye on his shoulder, probably hoping I wouldn't notice. He looks so relieved. I realize even after we made up in the meditation room, he was probably still feeling unsure of where we stood romantically. But there are boundaries, and if I'm dating you, you have to tell me everything, and no sleeping around behind my back. Of course. I've promised to tell you everything, especially everything that concerns you, and I don't ever intend on breaking that promise to you. And sleeping around? Amicus's ears flick and he glances over at our neighbors who are definitely trying to eavesdrop. He lowers his voice a good deal. Definitely not. Not that I have anyone to be with, but we can discuss all this when we get back to our room. And Amicus lowers his voice even more. Maybe do a little more as well. His ears flatten as I roll my eyes, but they come back up as I smile. Sure. Immediately, his tail starts thumping the bed, and the eager look on his face has me shaking my head. I can't deny that I'm excited too, actually. I'm feeling kind of nervous now that I just promised him that. How would we even start? We sit together for a while longer, the conversation moving to more casual topics like how the districts of the city are divided up. Though, as an hour passes, I start to feel hot and a little dizzy. When I mention this to Amicus, he suggests that we head back to the palace. Vita has completely set by the time we're heading out toward the carriage. Of course, several delegates surround us as we start to head off, but Amicus promises he'll only be 10 minutes, and I head out into the street alone to stand next to the chariot. It's a bit nicer out here in the open compared to the stuffy restaurant. I can tell now that I'm definitely getting sick, and some of the soreness and exhaustion was just the beginning of a creeping fever that I can feel breaking out across my skin. I end up sitting on the carriage step, head bowed as I feel myself starting to sweat. It's not anything I haven't felt before, but there's an odd prickling sensation underneath it all, like pins and needles just under my skin, leaving me wanting to itch at various places on my body. I just wish Amicus would hurry up. The others too, since I'm the only one standing here. I can't even remember where Nefero and Virginia went. Someplace shopping, I think. Simeon. Cassius's voice is low and quiet to my left, and I glance over to see him leaning up casually against the chariot. I make a half-hearted attempt at bowing at him, sort of just flopping my head in his direction. The wolf glares before walking toward me. What game are you playing? Now's probably the worst time for this to happen. Game? I mumble out stupidly, looking toward the restaurant to see if I can see Amicus through the crowd gathered in front. Do not act stupid. I know you're capable of understanding. I just shake my head, but immediately regret it as I feel all the food that I'd just eaten roil around in my stomach. I'm really sick, way more than I'd realized, and I can't believe how hard and fast it's hitting me. Do you remember several weeks back in which you served me during midday meal? Virginia and Nefero were there. I just stick to silence now, worried that moving at all is going to make me hurl. Of course you remember. You told the triumvirates about what I intended to do with them, didn't you? Cassius moves closer, but the feelings coursing through my body leaves me not caring all that much about him right now. I need to get to Amicus. I need to tell him that something's wrong. I hug myself, feeling the prickling sensation erupt to the surface, my skin on my arms and chest and legs burning and itching in the most horrible way. I gasp. What is that? Some sort of simian language? Listen to me. I want to know what you told them, and how you knew to tell them. I feel bumps on my arms, bumps that weren't there just minutes ago. I look down, and even though it's hard to see in the darkness, I'm at least able to see that the skin is splotchy and discolored. Shakily, I touch one of the splotches and watch as a tear of clear liquid oozes out. What the hell? Something grabs the front of my robes and pulls me up. Are you listening, pet? I said. I was worried about small movements, but that huge lurch pushes my stomach over the edge, and I immediately projectile vomit straight into the middle of Cassius's torso. We both stare at the mess on his fur, which is starting to drip down heavily onto his garments. Ew. Oh gods. Oh gods. The wolf screeches, and at the same time I vomit again, right in the same spot. Cassius immediately stumbles back, screeching as he waves his paws uselessly at the mess, then actually starts to retch himself. I'm not able to see if he's actually throwing up too. Instead, I crumple to sit on the ground, feeling the world spin around me. Thankfully, the next thing I hear is Amicus's voice. Sounds like he's coming from far away, even though I can tell that he's crouching right next to me. What did you do to him, Cassius? I did nothing. He... I hear splattering noises. Marco, what happened? What's wrong? I sway, and Amicus lets me lean into him despite my vomit-covered robes. I don't know. Was it the food? Are you... I stick out an arm, and I feel the wolf catch it delicately, examining it. Gods, he mumbles it under his breath. What happened? Cassius? I hear more footsteps, and for some reason, I feel myself becoming embarrassed that everyone's seeing me like this. That barbarian! He vomited on me. Sounds like Cassius is about to cry, and for some reason that's pretty funny to me right now. I try to laugh, but my throat is so sore. Virginia, he's sick. We need to get him back to the palace. Get in the carriage. It's too slow. I feel the world tilt as I seem to just levitate off the ground. Then I realize that Amicus has picked me up. The paraders have much faster vehicles. We could get one from them. Marco? I hear his voice, but for some reason I can't respond. It's like a dream. There's no time. I'm running back. Amicus! I feel my body bouncing up and down, thrown left and right. It's like I'm in some kind of demented thrill ride. I reach out into the darkness to stop it somehow, but all I feel is something furry and warm. Everything hurts and itches at the same time. What is this? Marco, hey, stay with me. I'm here. Who? I force my eyes to open, even though they burn so much. I stare up at the gnarled things above me, and I wonder what they are. All that comes to mind are bony, skinless hands reaching up to the sky. Can you hear me? There's a breathless, wheezing voice above me as the horrible bouncing ride continues. I just want to sleep. There's another sound, an odd droning one, and the earthquake finally stops. Amicus! Get in, you fool! Nefero, he's having seizures. He has pustules all over his body. The voice above me sobs and gasps, and I want to reach up and put a hand over its mouth so that it's quiet, so that I can sleep. Calm yourself. Virginia's having a physician flown into the palace. You need to... Everything mercifully goes quiet again. I float through a void of quiet, soft black clouds that tickle and nip at my skin. It itches, and I want to itch, but something seems to be holding me down. I open my eyes slowly, staring up at the ceiling. I'm starting to get really annoyed that I can't just fall asleep. I have so much to do tomorrow. We're going on a trip to Naples, I think, to try the authentic Italian pizza. I'm going to have a terrible time if I don't get at least a little. I realize that I can't move. Icy fear grips my chest, and at the same time, I see something large scuttling up the wall. A giant spider skitters upward, its movement off, like it's a puppet being pulled up by strings. Let me, give, a visual, because, visual time. Fuck. Browse. Desktop. Drawing. So it's just, going up the wall. It moves across the ceiling, and even though it's the size of a giant crab, I can't move at all. Adastra and arachnids are disturbingly large. I grit my teeth as it comes to a stop above my head and falls straight down onto my face, legs fanned out. Get off! I shove at it, at the things pressing against my face. I told you to hold him down. I'm trying. Marco, listen to me, please. We're safe. You're safe. We're helping you. I focus on the monsters above me, their massive white teeth and red glowing eyes. Their horrible hands come down to press on me, and I feel the pricking pain all over my skin. I thrash around, but it's no use. They're too strong. He's having another seizure. I lean against the side of a building on the empty road. The night is peaceful and quiet, mostly quiet. I hear clopping sounds in the distance, galloping sounds. I frown and lean forward a bit, looking up at the dark road. I see a horse running toward me. Its eyes glow red and spit flies from its mouth. Afraid, I press myself closer to the building, but the horse ignores me. Instead, as it runs past me, I see that it's dragging something. A wolf's headless body. The arms spread out, the stump leaving a long red streak across the cobblestones. I open my mouth to scream. We have nothing on record for his species. Then profile him. Is there a reason why we don't? Just heal him, please. It's just aviapox. Well, clearly it has a different effect on his species. His nervous system is already damaged beyond repair. You should consider... Things never seem to go as planned, do they? I am sorry that you had to experience this. I did not foresee it. Do not worry, you are still on the correct course. You will be able to complete this task. I just need a little time. Understand that this will not be easy, even for the parents. The pain will be temporary. What's happening? You will know in time, but not yet. Time loses meaning. Blackness, simultaneously eternal and non-existent. Nightmares ebb and flow, building and fading. Scenes from my earliest childhood to my landing on Adastra, all warped by horrific and violent imagery that never happened. But as soon as each one ends, I forget, just like any other dream, except one. I'm huddled in the seat of the ship, freezing cold, numb with desperation and the fear of impending death. How is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? I glance back at the crumpled form of the wolf in the back of the ship. His head is framed by a pool of blood, a metal pipe just a few feet away from where I dropped it. I've made a huge mistake. The anger and terror I've been feeling over the past several hours, days, weeks, builds until I scream and smash both of my fists on the glowing panels in front of me. Next thing I know, light blasts the interior of the ship and I cover my face with my hands. Still, the light pierces through and I see blood red. The ship vibrates violently, and I know right away that we're being pulled into it. I reach out despite the impossible light, uselessly pounding at the unresponsive panels. After a few moments, the brightness and heat become unbearable, and I literally throw myself to the floor, crawling away, crawling toward my wolf. Amicus, help! But the light continues to grow, and soon everything is lit up in a blinding white, the heat so intense that the metal melts underneath my hands and knees. I'm on fire. I am fire. I feel lines of molten lead course through the base of my neck, down my spine, branching out into my limbs, even my toes and fingers. I can only float in the inferno, dumbly wondering why I still feel if I'm dead, wondering if this is death as the ship, the wolf, and I become part of the star. Once again, time is lost, and I only exist as fire. I stare up at the sky, the air suddenly cool as I try to comprehend the sudden change from the harsh, all-consuming starlight to the gentle, cold moonlight. Still, fire continues to lance through my head, neck, spine, and limbs in agonizing lines, my body mapped like a tortured stick figure. It hurts more than anything I've ever experienced, but it's fading after what happened in the star, so I try to relax in the sand. After a few minutes, I realize that I can hear the waves, and I feel something drawing me toward the water. I'm a little scared of getting up, of any movement at all, terrified that it might trigger the pain anew, but it doesn't. It almost feels like I'm not moving at all. I glide toward the water, watching the surface reflect the bright planet and moon in hypnotic ripples. Entering the lake and feeling the cold, gentle water wash over my skin is the best feeling I've ever felt. It envelops me slowly, moving up my legs, torso, and finally my head, and just like that, the pain and fire is chased away, subdued to a dull, tingly throb. I gasp in relief, somehow able to breathe under the water. I drift through the dark water, watching the globes of light dance and sway above me before I finally resurface. It's only then that I remember Amicus. Fear grips me. Was he still on that ship? Did I leave him behind in the star? I look up and see the lights glittering from the pallets, and I begin to swim toward it, somehow moving much faster than I should be able to. Instead of swimming straight to the beach, though, I end up moving toward the balcony, straight to Amicus's room. As I get closer, I realize that someone is on the balcony. It's Amicus, and my heart fills with relief. He's got his back to the railing, leaning against it casually. Even though I can only see him from behind, I realize that it's not the Amicus I know. Instead, he's in full robes, and he's a lot skinnier than I remember. I slow down, wondering why he's not looking at me with all the splashing noises I'm making. Just as I'm about to call up to him, though, I see brown arms wrap around him, smoothing over his arms and back, and that's when Amicus turns to the side. I see now that those arms belong to another wolf, smaller and brown-furred, one that I've never seen before. Amicus is doing the same to him, paws moving around his body in a way that's awkward and hesitant, a pair of young lovers making out for the first time. I watch, suddenly feeling embarrassed. I'm back in Amicus's room, and that same teenage wolf is now on the sofa, bent over, hiding his face behind his paws. I've never seen Amicus really cry, but I can tell that's what he's doing now. I feel a sense of complete and utter shame, the feeling that you've let everyone down. It consumes me. I reach out toward the young wolf, wanting to comfort him, wondering if he'll even know who I am. Suddenly I'm sucked back into the cosmos. There is no parent this time. Instead, I float peacefully through the vacuum, staring down at what I assume is Adastra. Even though there isn't anyone here with me, I sense beings all around me. I also get a sense of approval, like their work is done. Finish Mirror's work, young human. Just like that, I start to drift back down toward the moon, descending faster and faster until everything becomes a blur. Water. This time, coming to feels real, and I immediately know I'm not in a dream. I smell lavender. Amicus? My eyes open like they're glued shut, and I have to rub at them to get them to fully open. The first thing I see is the sky, the planet Anchorus, and the moon Torque, both of them glowing brightly. I stare at the two floating orbs in the two floating orbs for a while, waiting for things to fall into place as to why I'm out here. I'm laying on something hard, like concrete, and I feel soft but weighty things on my chest. My hands are curled around it, and I lift it slowly to have a look, even though it feels like a 50-pound dumbbell. Flowers. Flowers with a fair bit of lavender mixed in. Slowly, I turn my head, and again, I get the feeling of heavy weights attached to my body. I somehow manage it and immediately see that I'm in the amphitheater. At the same time, I see more flowers, and I realize that they're arranged all around me in a circle. Moving my head around also makes me realize that there's something scratchy and prickly on my head. Still struggling with my heavy hand, I reach up and grab it. I lift it from my head and hold it in front of my face. My eyes taking a few moments to focus to find out that it's a wreath, pink flowers woven into the twigs. I finally drop my arm to the side, getting too tired to hold it up, and I watch it lazily roll a few feet away. The movement sends a wave of tingling through my body, but it fades quickly. The heavy weakness is also starting to fade, but I'm more worried about how I got here and why I'm covered in flowers. From what I can tell, I'm in the gardens, though part of it I haven't been to before. I close my eyes, trying to remember how I got here. Amicus, the trial of rhetoric, the restaurant, being sick. Again, I lift my arm, though it's easier this time, and I look at the skin. It's covered in crusty, yellowish scabs, though they don't hurt. I don't know why, but I get the feeling that the skin underneath is completely healed. I try to think again. I remember throwing up on Cassius, but after that, just terrible dreams. Did they heal me somehow? Is this flower thing part of that? I'm feeling some of my strength returning, so I force myself into a sitting position, joints popping and muscles stiff. Still, with every movement, things get easier. I do get lightheaded, though, and I have to sit there for a moment, looking around again, wondering where Amicus is. He'd sounded so desperate and sad the last I heard him. I need to show him that I'm okay now. At least I think I am. I slowly push myself up, listening to the gunshot cracks of my knees, as if I hadn't used them for days. I stand unsteadily in the center of the square, looking around at the circle of flowers. I'm startled when I turn and see a wolf behind me, but it's just a sculpture. A male wolf decked out in armor, both of his paws raised to the sky. He's got a bunch of flowers weaved around his wrists and on his head too. I wait a few moments, listening for anyone that might be nearby. All I hear are the insects around me. So I start to move toward the path that I know leads to the palace. Although I'm pretty sure I'm not dreaming now, this eerie scenario has me questioning that. The whole situation is surreal. All of the things that I remember happening last feel so distant. Despite spending all of my time on Adastra trying to be covert, I find myself longing to find someone. Anyone, really. I just need to know what's happening. And pretty soon, I do find someone. His back is to me, stooped over, fur almost ghostly in the glow of the garden lights. The cat busies himself with some flowers, a pair of metal clippers in his paws. As I get closer, I can hear him humming just above the noise of his busy snipping. I'm just opening my mouth when I see his ears perk. Cass, you know I don't like these games. Alex turns to face me, a knowing smile on his lips. That quickly disappears the second he sees me, though, replaced by a look of complete shock. Whatever he was trying to say doesn't seem to come out, and instead he just stands there, gaping at me. Hey. I can barely talk, my voice rasping out like sandpaper on wood. I take a step forward, and that's when Alex finally reacts, jumping almost a foot into the air in a backwards motion, putting space between us as he yelps. What? How? He stutters and stumbles over his words. I've seen Alex flustered before, but never like this. There's real fear in his eyes as he stumbles against some bushes. I wonder if he's just going to take off running, but instead he stands there, quivering as he holds the clippers up in front of his chest, as if contemplating using them as a weapon. I raise my hands reassuringly. Hey, Alex, it's me. I cough a few times, trying to clear my throat. I see Alex's ears twitch at the sound as he slowly lowers the clippers, though he moves to the side away from the bush, giving himself a clear path to the palace. Marco? But how? He's staring at me like what he's seeing is impossible. How what? I'm regaining my voice, slowly, but surely. What's happening? Alex finally seems to get a hold of himself, the fur slowly laying flat again as he eyes me, looking almost suspicious. I could ask you the same thing. This catches me off guard. Why? Well, Alex looks around before focusing on me again, tilting his head as if to look at me from a different angle. You were dead. Dead? Well, not completely, but you were in a coma that we were told you would not wake up from. Oh. I look down at myself, as if to confirm that I am indeed alive and well. Aside from the patchy scabs all over my arms and legs, I feel okay. Aside from the grogginess. I thought the doctor healed me. Alex's ears perk. Doctor? I mean, I think there was a doctor. I heard him when I was brought back here. Alex's eyes narrow. Amicus told us you were vegetative before he arrived. How did you hear him? I don't know. I might have dreamed it. I was really out of it. If you were still conscious when he arrived, he should have been able to halt the damage caused by the virus. Who's the doctor? With every passing second, I regain more and more of my wits, and Alex's demeanor is confusing me. He thought I was dead, and instead of being happy, I feel like he's interrogating me. That's also when I realize something else. Wait, you all think I'm dead? Well, not me anymore, obviously. It's all very strange. How did you survive exactly? Now the cat is starting to annoy me, and I look past him toward the palace, the situation finally dawning on me. Where's Amicus? The cat is quiet for a moment, as if contemplating something, then quirks his head. I'm not sure. He's been here and there, though I haven't seen him for at least a day. I walk past the cat toward the palace, realizing what sort of state the wolf might be in. Where are you going? I'm very happy to see that you are well. This is all just very sudden and unexpected. I ignore Alex, not really in the mood to figure out why he's acting the way he is. He's making me feel like I'm still dreaming. So I walk quickly, and I'm relieved that he doesn't follow me. The wave of cool air that hits me as I enter the palace is a welcome feeling, and I find myself grateful to be back. Despite having apparently been here the whole time, it really does feel like I've been away for weeks. I pick up the pace as I head toward Amicus's room, practically jogging. I have to let him know that I'm okay. The short distance to his room seems like it takes longer than it ever has before, and I'm glad that I don't run into anyone else on the way. That interaction with Alex was weird, and I don't need a repeat of that right now. I finally make it to his door, and I immediately hear muffled chattering behind it. I don't hesitate, though, and I press my hand to the panel. Yeah. The door slides open, and instead of the usual blast of colder air I would often get from Amicus, it's stuffy, warm, and the smell a little bit musky. The lights are dimmed, and my heart sinks when I see the empty bed. I linger in the doorway, though, something feeling off. The droning chatter is calm, giving what sounds like a monologue on the history of some past emperor. I see wine bottles, too, mostly bunched together on top of the bedside table, but there are also a few laying here and there on the floor. Amicus? I call out, starting to become afraid of what I might find. I take a few tentative steps into the room, and I hear a loud snort, and instantly, the worry gripping my chest starts to release. I'd recognize that sound anywhere. I hurry over to the other side of the bed, where I find my wolf splayed out on the floor, a wine bottle next to his head, only in his underwear. He's clearly asleep, or passed out, muzzle hanging wide open as another thunderous snore shakes the room. Amicus! I crouch down next to him, resting a hand on his chest, trying to shake him awake. His only response is a few more broken snorts before drooling out the side of his muzzle. I switch to patting his face, then grabbing his muzzle and shaking it around, noticing how crusty the fur is, something I've never felt on Amicus before. Amicus... I consider slapping him like I've seen people do in the movies. Then I see the bottle next to his head and decide to go for another approach. I snatch it up and hurry to the bathroom. I hold the bottle under the faucet for a good 5 seconds, letting it fill up with soapy water to the halfway point before I hurry back out into the room. Meanwhile, Calm doesn't seem to notice me, droning on about how this particular emperor was known for having a fondness of orchids. I crouch down next to Amicus again, hesitating for a second as I wonder if maybe I should call Cato. Probably not Cato. Neferu maybe, just in case Amicus is actually in trouble. I don't know how much a wolf can drink before it can kill them, but the sheer amount of bottles laying around the room worries me. I decide to just go ahead with my plan, and I upend the bottle over Amicus's face. It pours directly onto his nose, and he immediately chokes, turning his head this way and that to avoid the stream of bubbly water. I have a moment to wonder if drowning him is the best approach before he suddenly sits up, pawing at his face. Gah! The wolf covers his eyes, and it's only then that I realize how irritating the soap might be for them. Shit, sorry. Should I get some water from the shower so you can rinse your eyes out? Amicus freezes, still covering his face, and slowly lowers his paws to reveal his bleary, bloodshot eyes. Oh my god. He stares at me in a way that he never has before. I swear to God, I'm tearing up right now. It's kind of surprising, like Amicus. It's kind of surprised, like Alex had been. Rather than fear, Amicus simply looks empty, numb. Are you okay? I reach out, but Amicus turns his head away. Away with you, ghost. Enough of your torment. He keeps his head turned away, eyes closed. Ghost. Amicus, it's me. I reach out and grab his face, and that seems to shock him as he jumps and turns to look me right in the eye. I can tell that he's drunk. Very drunk. But there's an extra distant look in his eyes that I don't like. Amicus, what are you on? Did you take something? I hold his big head steady, feeling the fullness of his cheeks in my hands, looking into his familiar eyes, no matter how glazed and unfocused they are. Then I find myself throwing my arms around his neck and leaning into his body, the reality of the situation crashing down on me all at once. Amicus gasps into my ear, as if my touch suddenly makes him realize that I'm real, that I'm here. Clumsily, he starts to stand up, pulling me up with him. It's difficult because I don't let go, almost getting lifted off my feet before I settle on letting go for just a moment, to hug him lower, around his body, pressing my head to his chest, hearing his heart hammering inside. Finally, he's able to get a grip on me and push me away, despite my intention to cling to him forever. He holds me at arm's length, staring at me. I clutch his paws on my shoulders, staring up at him, feeling my eyes start to water. Is this possible? No, please, I can't handle another hallucination. His expression keeps morphing from hope and awe to devastation. I feel his paws grip into my shoulders tightly, almost painfully, as if to make sure I'm real. It's me. I woke up in the garden for some reason. I'm okay. I want to hug him again, but he keeps holding me away, looking me up and down, pushing my hair back and feeling my crusty skin. But how? I don't know. I just remember having crazy dreams. Then I was in the garden. As I'm talking, I think Amicus is finally believing it's me, and I notice that his body is starting to sway in a worrying manner. Amicus? I reach out to steady him, but as I do, his eyes roll back, and I realize there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to keep a wolf over twice my weight from toppling over. I try anyway, wrapping my arms around him as Amicus falls backward, his bulk pulling me down with him before he falls back first onto the bedside table, sending bottles flying while his upper back and head smashes into the wall. My fall is absorbed by his much softer front, but the sound is loud, the room shaking and probably waking up the entire palace. Waking the wolf up the second time is a lot easier, probably because he'd fainted rather than passed out from too much wine. Or at least able to move onto the bed where Amicus sits cross-legged, pulling me onto his lap and just holding me there, his paws moving around my body, still trying to make sure I'm real. For a moment, we don't talk, the wolf just pressing his nose to my hair and breathing in deeply. I feel a little self-conscious, knowing I must not smell very good right now, but that doesn't seem to bother Amicus as he goes on pressing his nose to my head and neck, taking in my scent. Finally, he does speak, but it's one word. How? I turn my head toward the wolf, resting my cheek against his neck. I don't know. I don't really even know what's happened to me. You got sick. So sick. You were having convulsions, brain and nerve damage. It was terrible. Amicus's arms tighten around me, his voice, normally deep and strong, now sounding weak and broken. This statement worries me, though, and I have to wonder if I really am better. There seems to be patches missing from my memory, and I do feel different, like I'm not fully myself, but I don't know what to think about it right now. But I don't really want to think about it right now. I think I remember a little bit of that, and I lift my arm up, showing Amicus the shiny, crusty scabs on my arm. It was aviopox. I can't believe I didn't consider the possibility of disease and illness for you. I'm just so used to the idea of any new arrival on Adastra going through that process. Obviously, we did it a bit differently. Yeah. And honestly, I'm not even sure I'd have you do it. I don't know if you'd react differently to those vaccinations. Each species has their own customized cocktail. And aviopox isn't included in the vaccination set. Such a mild virus, we'd never seen anyone react to it the way you did, even other primates. I think back to how quickly I became sick, how quickly I almost died. I notice Amicus looking down at me again, and I look back up at him. What? Amicus shakes his head. I'm just still trying to make sure you're here, that you're real. I'm afraid if I let go, if I even look away, you'll disappear. His arms tighten around me again, squeezing a huff of breath out of me. I'm here, I promise. Well, I've had a lot of hallucinations. Too many stress tablets, I think. Stress tablets? Yes, quite a few of them, in fact. With wine? Oh, yes. Amicus! I don't really know what these stress tablets are, but I imagine mixing Space Xanax with alcohol is a horrible idea. Amicus doesn't seem bothered by my reprimand, though, instead just snuggling closer to me, his crusted face fur prickly against my skin. I love you, Marco. I get that familiar swooping feeling in my chest, like I'm on a roller coaster. I clutch onto his arms. I love you too. Amicus sighs and sets his chin on my head. I thought I'd missed the opportunity to say it. I still can't believe you're real. Well, I am, I promise. But I still don't understand how. This shouldn't be possible. You were declared to be in a permanent coma. No brain activity. I just set you out in the garden and only hoped for a miracle. Miracle? Amicus lets out a shaky sigh, running his fingers through my hair. When a sapient falls into such a state, we simply let them fade away in a peaceful setting, or possibly recover if the parent allows it. I sat out there for a while, but couldn't bear to see you waste away, so I came back to my room to drink and prepare for the Emperor's ship. I imagine Amicus laying those flowers around me, and I feel my heart break a little. Did the parents come to you? Is that why you're here? I had hoped that they would. I shrug. I really can't remember much. It does not matter. My prayers were answered. Praise the gods. Amicus starts to smother me again with his hugging. Little bits of imagery from my dreams is starting to come back to me. Something happened in space. Someone talking to me. And judging by the only human I know, your people are full of surprises. We can figure it out later. I just want to hold you right now. Okay. And Marco? Yeah? Please try to avoid mentioning that I lost consciousness when I saw you. Of course. So we sit there for a while longer while Amicus just sort of cuddles with me. After about an hour, we finally decide to move to the shower, considering the state we're both in. Okay, I'm definitely going to age restrict this video. Get up. I jump at the same time I feel Amicus jolt against me. We both struggle to sit up while pulling the covers up over us. Out of the bed. The jarring appearance of Cato has me staring at him in surprise, unsure of what to do. Amicus immediately moves through, pulling me off the bed with him, standing up slightly in front of me as he hands me the blanket to cover myself up. We both stare at Cato, the old wolf actually shaking with fury. Make yourself decent, Amicus. Amicus hurriedly snatches up the underwear from the dresser, giving me one of my own as well. As I'm struggling to tie mine on, I notice Cassius standing in the doorway, something shiny and flashing with lights in his paws. He doesn't have the usual sour look on his face, though. Instead, he almost looks scared. Cato lets us stand in silence for a moment before turning his head toward the door. Felix, enter. I hear shuffling out in the hallway, and Cassius moves to the side to allow a neatly robed wolf to enter. He looks about as old as Cato, though nowhere near as big. He moves timidly, looking about with his ears down. Yes, Your Imperial Majesty? Is that the alien you treated for avian pox? Cato jerks his head at me, keeping his eyes on Felix. Felix turns to look at me, and I can tell that he's trying to think of the right thing to say. Finally, he just gulps and nods his head. Yes, I treated him 3 nights ago for avian pox. And his species had no profile? No, I could only tell that he was a primate. How is he conscious? Calm. Escort Felix to the dungeons. Yes, Cato. What? Why? Why to the dungeons, Your Majesty? Felix looks imploringly at Cato before the probes enter. Proceed to the hall or risk being shot, Felix. Please, what is happening? Even while he speaks, Felix backs out of the room, Cato completely ignoring him. We all listen to the doctor's stumbling steps out in the echoing hall. Wolf making an attempt to ask Cassius what's happening before things fall silent again. Cassius, come in and close the door. Cassius, looking even more scared now, steps inside and allows the door to close. Cato stares at the two of us. At this point, Amicus has one paw on my arm, keeping me firmly halfway behind his back. I'm still able to look around his shoulder at the furious acting Emperor. Slowly, I'm starting to realize what might be happening right now, and Cato's next words confirm it. Amicus, did you make first contact? Amicus is silent for a beat, but responds in a strong, confident voice. No, of course not. What in the world are you talking about, Cato? Cato stares, jaw clenched, then screams at us in a volume I didn't think he was capable of. Do not play games with me, Amicus. To his credit, Amicus only jumps a little bit, his grip still firmly on my arm. The silence that follows rings in my ears as Cato seems to work to calm himself down. When he speaks again, his voice is barely above a whisper. He is unprofiled. All children, abandoned or not, are profiled. He is not a simian. So what is he? Amicus is frozen and I feel my stomach drop, like I'm going to piss myself. I see Cato working his jaw. And is it true he's your lover? Lover? How would he know anything about that? Amicus doesn't answer this time, and that seems to be enough for Cato. Fine, do not answer. We will take the correct precautions. Calm. Yes, Cato. Terminate Marco. No! Amicus simultaneously throws himself in front of me while reaching back and hugging me to him with both paws, backing me against the wall. Drones begin to enter the bedroom, but Cato barks out another order. Pause last directive. Pausing last directive. My view is obscured now, but I can hear Amicus's heavy breathing, his heart hammering so hard that I can feel it through his back. Once again, Cato allows the silence to stretch out before speaking. Then tell us the truth, Amicus. You must not harm him, otherwise I will give you nothing, and I'll have you thrown in the dungeon when I become emperor. More silence. I wince, wondering how that possibly could have been the right thing to say. Then I hear a loud, low growling sound, one that I'm sure is coming from Cato. How dare you! You think you'll become emperor after this? In fact, I hear a quick movement, and the next thing I know, Amicus is wrenched in front of me. I watch as he slides across the floor before Cato pounces on him, pinning him there. Cassius, grab the alien. Set the Nervo to lethal. No, please! I'm frozen, but I manage to look over at Cassius, who seems just as frozen as I am, holding up the Nervo in his trembling paws. Move, you idiot! Cassius jumps and hurries over to me. I start to pull away, but he grabs me up in an awkward hold, setting the Nervo against my neck. No! Amicus's struggles double, and Cato is bucked around like he's on a mechanical bull. Cease struggling, Amicus. He will not be harmed if you do as I say. Amicus seems to calm down a bit at that, panting wetly against the floor as he looks straight at me, face full of desperation. You've proven yourself to be an incompetent fool, even more so than I'd originally thought. You've endangered our entire empire. For this, you will not become emperor. Rules be damned. It's a wonder how you thought you'd get away with this. It can only be a miracle that the monitors have not found out, and they surely would know if you became emperor with that thing. Cato stands and wrenches Amicus to his feet, twisting the other wolf's paws behind his back hard enough that Amicus lets out a bark of pain. Third trial begins today. You will lose, and Cassius will become emperor. Cato begins to push Amicus to the doorway. Do as I say, and I will let the alien live. Otherwise, we can do all of this in the most unpleasant way possible. Understand? Amicus is quiet until Cato shakes him by his pinned arms. Yes. Good. Now to the amphitheater. We will do this quickly. Do not make any stupid moves, otherwise I will let the drones escort you instead. Cato presses Amicus toward the door. I see Amicus glance back at me, the look on his face one of utter helplessness. We're out the door by the time Cassius realizes he's supposed to be following. He jumps before awkwardly pushing me after them. It's already sunset when we get to the amphitheater. We must have slept for most of the day. Amicus and Cato are already standing in the center of the amphitheater as Cassius struggles to move me down the steps. Sit him down, Cassius, and get down here. Shakily, Cassius plants me down on one of the stone steps before suddenly undressing. This one I notice that he's tucked the Nervo into his waistband. Possibly because of the frantic nature of the whole situation, Cassius seems to have forgotten it, and I'll watch it fall into his clothing as he drops it from his waist. He then stumbles his way down to the center. Amicus, meanwhile, stands stiffly next to Cato, his paws clenched, and I feel my heart sink as I see the look on his face. He has no idea what to do. Several camera drones had followed us to the amphitheater, their lights glowing an ominous red. For several moments, Cato watches them arrange themselves around the small theater, their lenses flashing in the fading light. Cato? What, Cassius? There was no trial scheduled for today. How will this be broadcast anywhere? This will not be live. I'll think of a reason to tell the people later. We only need a single clip of you being victorious. They will never believe this. Though Amicus is putting on a brave face, I can hear his voice shaking. Pugnu is a combination of skill and luck, and it's not always the strongest that wins. We will manage. And how... Cato suddenly whirls on Amicus, throwing a punch so hard into his jaw that the other wolves spin. It's almost 360 degrees before collapsing on the hard floor of the amphitheater. I'm standing up without even remembering doing so, heart hammering in my throat as I look down at Amicus. He doesn't move. Meanwhile, Cato shakes his paw lightly, like it only stung a little. Cassius, on the other hand, is clasping both of his ears to his paws, staring down at his brother in a mix of shock and horror. Cato, what are you doing? Making it look more authentic is all. Amicus stirs on the ground, groaning and pushing himself up. I see dark spots forming under his face, blood dripping from his nose. A camera drone drifts down slowly, filming Amicus as he spits blood. I realize then that I have to do something. I've been told to sit on the sidelines for far too long. I am not entirely convinced that I'm going to be okay after this. I'm a risk to the entire Empire. Why would Cato let me live after I'm done being useful? I have to do something. So I quickly sit back down and lean over to reach into Cassius's pile of clothes, quickly finding the Nervo and pulling it out. I stand back up again to take a step downward, and no one seems to notice. Come on, Amicus, get up. You need to grapple with Cass. Why didn't we just use makeup instead? There is no time. Cato finally bends down to grab Amicus under the arms and heave him up to his feet. The big wolf left to stumble unsteadily, blood running down his chin. Cassius, get Amicus in an ankle lock and drop him. That should be enough. They set up their scene, even though Amicus seems almost completely out of it. All of them are distracted, and I realize that this might be my only chance. Slowly, I take one step at a time, down toward the center of the amphitheater. Meanwhile, Cassius is struggling to pick up Amicus's leg, almost losing his own balance as he does. After that, Cato tells Amicus to fall back, which the wolf does, slowly. Cassius pins him on the ground after that, and I don't think it looks convincing at all. But that really doesn't matter now, as I'm only a few steps from the ground floor. Now, stand and raise your paws in victory, Cass. Look proud. At this moment, things start to move in slow motion. Amicus is flat on his back, but he's looking right at me. There's a questioning look in his eyes, then a pleading one, as if urging me to step back. I don't. Instead, I take the final step down onto the floor of the amphitheater, just behind Cassius, moving towards Cato. But the white wolf continues to celebrate his pretend victory, and he turns his raised paws to face me. I see the sudden recognition on his face. I run out of options and jam the Nervo right into his chest. Instantly, Cass is shot backwards several feet to crumple next to Amicus, shivering and convulsing. Before I can even turn to Cato, though, the old wolf is on me, grabbing the Nervo out of my hands and pulling me close by the front of my robes, my teeth clacking together with how fast he does it. He's looking at the Nervo rather than me, though. Damn it, thank the gods this idiot didn't have it set on lethal. Cato fiddles with the device, and I realize he's about to use it on me. I struggle, kicking at the massive wolf, but he's strong, stronger than even Amicus. But just as he flips the device around the two metal prongs pointed at my face, I see a paw come over the top of Cato's head. Amicus grips the metal grating of Cato's face mask, fingers locking into the gaps before he pulls. Cato screams, and I hear a horrible mix of crunching, tearing, and an electronic hiss as I see red spurt from the old wolf's face for just a moment before he goes down. Amicus stares at me with wild eyes as he tries to keep Cato pinned. Marco, run! Run to Neferu! Run! I stare at Amicus numbly for a moment in which I want to do so much but can't, then turn and start to run. I run as fast as I can, disappearing behind the trees and bushes, just as I hear Cato yelling for Khan to execute me. Hearing that, my whole body numbs up. I can barely feel my feet hitting the ground, pumping my arms as I tear through the garden. I don't even bother with the paths, instead crashing through the foliage and brushes, scratching up the skin on my arms and legs as I trample over something covered in thorns. I don't care as I run straight through a 10-foot wide through a 10-foot wide spider web, the massive spider in the middle hitting my chest, then falling and disappearing under my feet. The sound of Cato and Amicus struggling behind me has long since faded. Now all there is heavy breathing and the snapping and crashing of the plants around me. I wonder if maybe I should stop making noises, try to hide instead. but I worry that Calm will know exactly where I'm at. I know they're following me right now, and ominously. I can't hear a damn thing. I can't see them either, just the flashes of branches and greenery around me. When I finally make it to the main path of the palace, I catch my first glimpse of the drones. They're hovering further up the path toward the amphitheater. It makes me wonder if they're stuck on a grid somehow and had been unable to follow me into the actual garden. I think about turning back and trying to hide in the garden again, just as I rush through the entrance, but I realize immediately that they're too close. Sure enough, I hear a crack behind me just as I turn the corner into the main hall toward Neferu's room. Get a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye. I'm not sure what I expected the weaponry to be. A red laser, an arc of electricity, actual bullets maybe? What I do see is a strange bending of the air in the space I'd just been a second ago, like looking through this warped piece of glass before suddenly it snaps back into place, making my ears pop and throwing my body sideways. I stumble, but I don't stop. Neferu's room just a few dozen feet ahead of me. Now I can hear the drones, an odd, angry buzzing like wasps. Halt, Marco. I hear Calm's gentle, calm voice, a stark contrast to what he's actually doing right now. It startles me, and I put on an extra burst of speed just before I reach Neferu's door. I can only hope that he's there, otherwise I'm going to be cornered. It'll be where I die. With my breath wheezing through my throat, I throw a hand out desperately, pressing it to the black panel on the door. Nothing. It doesn't open. It's locked. I thought the doors don't lock here. I see the drones out of the corner of my eye, and I pound on the door as hard as I can, screaming as loud as I can. Neferu! Neferu, help! There's a pause, then I hear something to my right as it sounds like the static getting louder and louder, and I press myself against the door, waiting for whatever it is the blast will do to me. Then I'm falling through space. I'm convinced then that I've died, that this falling sensation is what it's like to die. Will I land on something or just fall forever? I get my answer almost immediately as I hit the ground face first on the hard marble floor. I'm dazed that there's another sharp crack behind me, and I feel the force of it sending a gust of air over me. A hotep! Neferu's voice yelps above me, and I hear the sound of the door sliding shut. Calm, what is going on? Disengage your door's security measures, Neferu. What's happening? Neferu's crouching over me now, and I think he's talking to me, but Calm answers him instead as the jackal starts to help me to my feet. The child is to be terminated. Please disengage security to allow drone entry. What? No, Marco, what's happening? Neferu has pulled me to my feet at this point, looking me right in the eye. I find myself way more out of breath than I thought I was as I try to gasp out an answer. Amicus lost emperorship. Neferu opened the damn door. Cato's voice crackles through the speakers above me, making me jump. It's strained and breathing heavily, and I wonder what he's doing right now, what Amicus is doing. The jackal pushes me back to stand behind him, keeping himself between me and the door. Even though he's got his face set into a stern glare, he's as calm as he always is. Cato, what a pleasant surprise to hear your voice. May I ask why you want entry into my quarters? The Emperor's quarters, you dog. Calm. Override door security. Overriding security. There's a hiss and click from the door, and suddenly it slides open. Quickly, Neferu backs into me, much like Amicus did earlier this morning, and I find myself pressed back into one of the pillars, the jackal's body almost entirely covering me up. Although I know Amicus is a good deal bigger than Neferu, I'm still struck by the jackal's size now that he's so close to me. Step aside, Neferu, or risk being shot. Don't shoot the jackal. Neferu, what are you doing with it? Cato is breathing heavily, and it sounds like he's moving around. Can't see a damn thing. Have you called a ship? Yes, Your Imperial Majesty. There's more muffled moving around, and I wonder what Cato's speaking into. Maybe a drone? Neferu, I asked you a question. Simply protecting a fellow Chemian. There's a moment of silence. A what? Chemian. Neferu enunciates very slowly, and I look up at the back of his head, just as confused as Cato. Don't press so damn hard, cat. What do you mean, Neferu? Cato's voice takes on a more growly tone as he turns his attention from whatever he was doing back on us. I mean that the child has been granted citizenship in the Chemian kingdom, and it would be unwise to attack him. Neferu's voice takes on an almost smug tone. An attack on him would be an attack on all of us. An attack on him would be an attack on us all. Surely you understand this, Emperor. You lie. Would you like to test that? There's a long pause. In the meantime, a low rumbling sound grows, audible not only through the intercom, but through the floor of the palace as well. The ship is arriving, Your Imperial Majesty. Yes, I can see that cat. Neferu. Another long pause. We will discuss this further once I'm back in the palace. I don't know what you and Amicus have planned, but know that I'll be keeping a very close eye on you. That creature is not to leave the palace. Wolf suddenly grunts and I can hear the voices of other wolves as well. I'm fine. Just get me to the hospital. There are more sounds of movements, grunting, cursing, and voices of concern before the wolf speaks to us again. And remember, you have no way off this moon at the moment. It would be wise to do as I say. Of course, Your Majesty. Cato grunts. Calm, cancel last directive. Execute Marco if he tries to leave the palace. Yes, Cato. The connection suddenly cuts off and the two of us are left to stand in silence. Finally, Neferu lets out a long, soft sigh. Damn. Jackal finally takes a few steps forward before turning to face me. Well, this situation is less than ideal. I received news that you somehow rose from the dead last night, and now this? Calm, send us the physician. Even though I've caught my breath at this point, I realize that I'm sweaty and covered in scratches. Cannot comply with directive. Felix is currently in the dungeons. What? Why? Under the orders of the Emperor, Neferu. Damn. This time the Jackal says it out of amazement rather than annoyance. Well, send bandages and a salve at least. Yes, Neferu. Marco, what happened? Where's Amicus? After a few more deep breaths, I began to go over everything that had happened, starting at the point where we were woken up by Cato and ending where I'd attacked Cassius and made a run for Neferu's room. Try to keep things vague, like Cato just decided that Amicus was unfit for the job and wanted to illegitimately put Cassius on the throne. But of course, Neferu immediately realizes that I'm leaving things out. Then why does he want you executed? Seems odd he'd suddenly decide to do all of this now. I hesitate. It's at this moment that the doors slide open, causing me to jump and cower as a drone enters. Steady, Marco. It's just the medical supplies I requested. Have a seat on the bed. There are 2 beds, but the Jackal gestures at the smaller one. Dumbly, I point this out to him. Why do you have 2 beds? As I sit, Neferu sets the supplies, all laid out on a metal tray, to the side, uncorking a bottle and dipping a brush into it. He then starts to apply a dark orange liquid to the cuts on my arms and legs. Well, one for the Emperor, and interestingly enough, this one is for the Emperor's pet. Lift your arm. I do as he says, still feeling numb as he starts to coat a rather deep cut on the underside of my arm. Can we go find Amicus? Where's Amicus, Calm? That Neferu is confidential and only accessible by the Emperor, Neferu. I see the Jackal's eyes narrow as my stomach twists. What does that mean? Could mean any number of things. I clutch my hands together, feeling my anxiety grow. But is he alright? What if Cato did something to him? Neferu rests upon my shoulder. I understand your worry for Amicus' safety, but also understand that Cato would not even think of taking Amicus' life. The wolf is likely imprisoned somewhere after what he did. It still doesn't make me feel all that much better, but I manage to hold still as the Jackal continues to treat me. After a period of silence, Neferu sighs. So at this point, we're in a rather precarious situation. I promised Amicus that if something happened to him, I would do everything in my power to keep you safe. Neferu pauses, but only continues when I look up to meet his eyes. It would seem that what he worried about has come to pass, and now I must carry out that promise. But to do that, I need you to be honest with me so that I may know exactly what we are dealing with. I gaze at Neferu for a while, wondering how much is at stake right now. The events of the past hour have left me emotionally drained, numb, aside from the twisting anxiety of wondering what's happening to Amicus right now. I feel myself deflate. Amicus made first contact with me. Cato found out. I wait for a moment, wondering if the Jackal is just going to toss me out into the hall after learning such a terrible secret. But when Neferu doesn't say anything, I look up. Mother... I guess I expected to see a look of shock or even horror on the Jackal's face, but it mostly just looks annoyed. You know, I had suspected such a thing considering all of the odd quirks you possess, but I had also thought that even Amicus would not be so foolish enough to do it. I feel myself grow a little defensive. Hey, he didn't know. We've been contacted by the wolves before, but we lost the history of it somehow. Even so, he should have taken more care. That's in the past now, however. We must focus on the present. Aren't you worried about getting in trouble? Me? Why would I be worried? Isn't an authorized first contact, like, really, really bad? Well, yes, but I'm not the one that committed the crime. The burden rests on Amicus and on the wolves. I'm merely here to help a sapient that I did not know was an uncontacted alien. Neferu starts to wrap the bandages around the deepest cut on my arm. And how did I become a citizen? I authorized at the embassy shortly after the deal I made with Amicus. You were never officially his pet, thus never a member of the Empire. We thought it best to simply grant you citizenship in the meantime. You can just do that? Well, yes, I'm the son of the Pharaoh. Don't I have to sign something or something? It has been taken care of. How? Again, son of the Pharaoh. I sit in silence for a while, trying to comprehend all of this while still worrying about Amicus. Can we find out where Amicus is? We will shortly. How? Even if it was supposedly a secret, word spreads fast in these halls. Why are you helping me? This is all so crazy. I've told you before, Marco, it is the duty of a Chemian to help a sapien in distress. I stare at the jackal. Uh-huh, and why else? Nefaru smiles gently at me. Despite our past interactions, I consider Amicus a friend. You are very important to him, and I see it as my duty to keep you safe. And would it be strange that I consider you a friend as well? Friend. Does this have to do with the Alliance? Nefaru continues to smile. I suppose there are a few other reasons. Those reasons are pretty easy to figure out. Keeping me protected will keep Amicus happy, and Amicus knowing that Nefaru did that will make the Alliance more likely, assuming we get out of this mess. Obviously, Nefaru won't say, but knowing this is most likely the main reason actually makes me feel a little bit better. I don't have to worry that the jackal has some other nefarious plans in store for me. Virginia requests access to your quarters, Nefaru. And here might be the answer to your earlier question. Granted, Calm. The door slides open, revealing Virginia. She doesn't look happy. Immediately, she stalks into the room, eyes on me, glaring. I wonder what exactly it is she's waiting for. Then the door slides shut. What in the name of Romanus have you done, alien? Nefaru chuckles. Easy, Virginia. He's been through quite a lot in the past hour. Easy? Cassius and Cato are in the hospital. Amicus is in the dungeons. Cassius is about to become emperor. Our plans are in ruins, Nefaru. The wolf folds her arms and looks around slowly so that she can better look at me. What happened? My first instinct is to stay quiet, cross my eyes in that dull, vacant stare, and pretend not to understand. But then I realize I don't have to anymore. I'd come to the realization after the second trial, but now that everything has fallen apart, now that I actually have some protection, I find myself bristling at the she-wolf's accusing stare. Cato's a complete monster. He staged the third trial so that Amicus would lose. I used the Nervo on Cassius and should have done the same to Cato. Then Amicus ripped his visor off. Virginia gives me a look of surprise, probably not expecting me to be so honest. Or maybe she's just shocked at how brutal things got. She then looks to Nefaru, who nods in response. But why? That's when I hesitate again. But again, I feel like it doesn't matter much anymore. Amicus made first contact with my species. What? The wolf looks horrified, bringing a paw to her muzzle. Now this is the kind of reaction I'd expect. Why would he do such a thing? I don't know. His research on my planet told him otherwise, I think. Virginia just stares at me, then looks away toward the door. Honestly, knowing your brother, it's not all that surprising. I know my brother is an idiot. I did not know he's psychotic. Now I really bristle. The idiot thing might be kind of true, but talking about Amicus like this after everything that's happened, while he's sitting in the dungeons, wherever those are, it makes me angry. Hey, he had no reason to believe we weren't part of the Galaxias. The library or archives or whatever told him that we were. He just panicked and rushed things when he found out the truth. Nefaru and Virginia stare at me, looking unconvinced. I sigh. So where are the dungeons? Is he okay? Can I see him? Virginia paces around to the side, staring into the fountain. He was stunned by a drone, but was conscious as he was escorted. The dungeons are under the palace, possibly just under our feet. I look down automatically at the marble floor, picturing the wolf sitting down there. Can I see him? Obviously not. Cato has allowed access only for himself. That authority will pass on to Cassius when he becomes emperor. I continue to stare at the floor. I feel better now that I know he's at least alive, but I want to see him. I need to see him. So what do we do now? I look up to see that Virginia is talking to Nefaru. I'm working on it. This will take time to sort out. And it was all going so well. As it often does before it falls apart. What are you talking about? Virginia glances at me in mild surprise, like she forgot I was there. It does not concern you, Marco. You look injured. Why don't you rest? I stand up. Look, I think by now you should know that I'm not some idiot slave for you to order around anymore. It was an act. I understand everything you say, and I know all of you have your own little agendas. I see Virginia bristling, but I just don't care anymore. But honestly, I don't really give a fuck what either of you want. I want to help Amicus. So if that's part of this plan you're talking about, then I want to know about it. The two aliens stare at me. Then Nefaru starts laughing, but I cut him off. Stop acting like everything's so fucking amusing to you. This isn't funny. Amicus is in trouble, and even though he put me in this mess, he's the only one I know for sure that gives a damn about what happens to me. Thankfully, the jackal does stop laughing, regarding me with those blue eyes. You're right, Marco. I apologize. I was just not expecting such a powerful retort. I like it. He then turns to Virginia. He's part of this as much as we are. I believe he should know what we are up to. Virginia sniffs. Granting him Chemian citizenship seems to have bolstered his boldness. I wonder if that was a mistake. It was necessary. Neferu then turns to me. Marco, these plans were meant to be set in motion once Amicus became emperor. You both have interests in Amicus becoming emperor. We did not interfere during the trials, but we did plan to begin our work when it was all but confirmed he would become emperor. What interests? Well, it may come as no surprise that I wish to have the alliance. Virginia, on the other hand, Neferu glances at her. Wolf barely seems interested and shrugs her shoulders. To be his chief advisor. In the end, we both agreed that Amicus would be best to fulfill both our interests as opposed to Cassius. We simply agreed to help each other accomplish these plans of ours. Interests. I guess that's the appropriate word to describe what most relationships hinge on in this stupid empire. Do you even care that your brother is in the dungeons? I ask Virginia directly, surprising myself. Or do you just care about what interests you? Virginia scoffs at me, and Neferu gives me what I can only imagine is a warning look. I care deeply about many things. What I don't care for is being lectured by an alien who does not understand the meaning of Wolven legacy. I don't say anything, and Neferu coughs. Anyway, we have plans to work together to see if there might not be a way to redeem Amicus and place him on the throne. Already? Wait, did you already have plans to unseat Cassius if he won? Yes. I shake my head, realizing just how much of a facade this entire empire really is. Well, then I want to help. And what would you be able to do? While I never had a problem with Virginia while I was pretending to be a pet, I find talking with her directly to be rather unpleasant. But I guess it makes sense that she'd be bitter towards me. I'm technically the reason her brother is in the dungeons, and her chance of being advisor is now 0 under Cassius. Virginia may be right, Marco. You are on unstable ground with Cato and Cassius, the two most powerful wolves on the moon. You should probably stay hidden in my quarters for the foreseeable future. I frown. All day? Every day? Yes. I don't like the sound of that at all. Well, you could be useful if the third trial was truly staged. Obviously, your word won't hold much weight, but if we can find footage to go along with it, we might be able to put a dent in Cato and Cassius's image. I look at Virginia, but she's already stalking off toward the door. Unfortunately, I have to attend a meeting in Cato's stead. For obvious reasons, we'll have to discuss all of this in depth later. As she reaches out for the black panel, I suddenly have an idea. Virginia? She doesn't say anything, but her ears perk. Could you talk to Cassius when he's emperor about letting me see Amicus? I just want to make sure he's okay. There's a short pause as the door opens before I see her nod her head. I'll see what can be done. With that, she steps out and the door closes behind her. I'm left alone with the jackal, my new, well, not master. I guess more of a partner. He smirks at me. Try not to antagonize her too much in the future. She started it. I recognize it, and it was wise of you to put your foot down not only with her, but with me as well. But she's very, very smart, and it's essential we have her on our side. He's not wrong. I realized just before she left that she's basically my only connection to Cato and Cassius, both of whom I doubt would want to talk to me. Now, the jackal moves to the door himself, calling over his shoulder. Unfortunately, I must also take my leave. I'm going to gather a bit of information from the city. I'll be back toward the end of the day. Again, try to stay inside this room. It's locked to everyone but the Emperor. With that, the jackal leaves the room as well, leaving me alone in the room. I lay back, wondering how things went so wrong so fast. I don't like any of this, and just like my first day on this moon, I feel out of place and completely out of my element. I just wish Amicus were here. I roll over, hugging the pillow as I try to fall asleep. And that is where we're going to leave off. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to age restrict this video because even though there was nothing that actually showed, there was still a lot of description going on. Like with Echo, I just yeah. Actually, let me look up. Yep. Okay. Yeah, let me like stop that real quick and also show my screen. Fuck, cancel. Wrong thing. Display capture. Here we go. Okay. It says here, what this policy means for you. If you're posting content, don't post content if it has any of the items below. Explicit content featuring below policy violations could result in channel termination. Depiction of genitals, breasts, or buttocks, clothed or unclothed, for the purpose of sexual gratification. Pornography or depicting sexual acts, genitals, or fetishes for the purpose of sexual gratification on any surface, such as video, text, audio, images. Names, comments, live streams, and any other YouTube product or feature. Okay. So I think what I'm actually going to do is just edit out that sex scene. Yeah, I'm just going to edit it out. So in that case, stay safe and have a good night.